Welcome back. Joining us now for a conversation about the workforce we need to address cyber threats, please welcome Emilio Escobar, Chief Information Security Officer at Datadog, Craig Newmark, founder of Craigslist and Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Camille Stewart Gloster, Deputy National Cyber Director for Technology and Ecosystem Security at the White House Office of the National Cyber Director, and Hugh Thompson, partner with Crosspoint Capital Partners. Leading the conversation is Nicole Tisdale, Senior Advisor to Aspen Digital.
Good morning. I know we have people joining us coming in from the break, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to leave the first question to everyone to also give you more information about their background, but I just want to set the table a little bit about why it's important for us to have this conversation. Everyone here is a part of the cyber workforce, and I think it's important for us to kind of table set that cyber workforce shortages and the issues that we have recruiting and retaining staff in the cyber workforce is a national security issue. All of us know that when we have shortages, we are more vulnerable, but also I think as we talk about how we build our workforce and making sure that our workforce is diverse and inclusive, and that means across racial, ethnic, geographical, and socioeconomic ties is really important. We've all been in a room where groupthink is taken over because we are in spaces and places that are homogenous. We've also seen that when we don't have diverse voices and we are short, we also we don't have the ability to innovate and come up with new ideas and see what's behind the next corner. And so today, we're going to just have a very open dialogue about what are the challenges in the cyber workforce, but also what we can do as we go forward to build in a way that's going to be helpful to address our cybersecurity issues. I wanted to just kick it off with the very first question as people give a little bit about their background. Talk to us about why you are working on cybersecurity workforce issues, right? Everybody up here has what I call their full-time job, and so you've also taken on another full-time job where you're focused on workforce. So share with people about why this is important to you. Emilio, why don't you get us started?
Sure, and before I start, your water bottle, there you go.
Oh, it's leaking, thank you.
So I think as you said, right, so it's a hot industry right now. It's front page in most of the media. We know that we have a lot of vacancies, and there's plenty of articles that talk about it. It is a national security issue if you're in the public sector, where if you can attract good talent or new talent there, but it's also a private sector concern as well, where we have roles that we're trying to hire for, and the talent pool is not only very competitive, but also is very challenging as well to get in. So me being a result of a internship with the NSA actually, and getting started that way, I like helping people get started in this field because I know it's very challenging to start. It's a pretty scary field to get into.
Yes. I'm also a former intern in the public sector too.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah. What about you, Craig? Talk to us. How did you get here? Did Craigslist bring you here?
Well, my deal with Craigslist, for the most part, we help people put food on the table, get a table, that kind of thing. But about 5 years ago, I realized that no one at Craigslist needs me anymore. But I had started doing a lot of philanthropic work, figuring I could give back to the people who had protected the country and to help out the people who continue to protect the country. So I talked to a lot of vets and military families, and they tell me it's time to enlist. And cybersecurity is a natural area for me to enlist in. I have a small amount of background in it, but maybe I have the ability to do some good about it. So I took a look at the past, like World War II. Everyone was expected to play a role in defending the country, because that's what we need now. We need everyone to play some role in defending the country if they can. And I figured too, I grew up during the whole duck and cover thing. Seriously. So I'm thinking that we need a whole of nation response in cyber, and we need what I'm calling cyber civil defense. The idea that if you're a regular person I can help other people get you the education you need to defend your stuff, your computers and phones inside the house and out. And maybe, if you're good at that, maybe I should also help find a way to get you the training you need and maybe internship so that you can get a professional job, a career in defending the nation in this new arena. To that effect, I've so far contributed about, well over 50 million. But the deal is that it's incumbent on someone to do that. And yes, someone needs to play that role. And like the Batman says, I'm not the nerd you want, but I'm the nerd you got.
I like that. Thank you, Craig. Camille, talk to us. How did you get here? What's your faves?
So I started in cybersecurity because I wanted to empower people and society in and through technology, and I also like complex challenges. And over the course of working in this space, I started to realize that there was a little bit of a gap in how we were thinking about these challenges. We were heavily focused on the technical aspect. And if you think of cyberspace as technology, people, and process or doctrine, then we were really focused on the technology piece and trying to build the doctrinal piece. But what about the people? And often that became a human capital conversation, but it's actually bigger than that. And if you think about how people use technology, that all of the actors, malicious or the users we seek to protect, the technologists creating technology are all people, and how that then changes our use, our implementation, the threat landscape, all of those things, it became an imperative for me to talk about the gaps I was seeing on the people side, about how we were understanding how technology showed up in different communities, how systemic inequity was impacting our ability to actually understand the threat landscape and create mitigations that actually solved all of the challenges we were trying to solve for. So it was very clear to me that it was a national security imperative, and so I started doing things like Share the Mic in Cyber and Next Gen NatSec to really elevate the conversation and get more people involved in the industry, because if we diversified our workforce, if we got more people interested in really fun and interesting challenges on technology that they use every day, we would be able to better attack the problem space. And then that just kind of grew in a way that I could not have anticipated, and then came to the National Cyber Director's Office to lead a division that looks at the future of those three spheres, right? People, doctrine, and technology. And so one of my divisions is focused on emerging tech, but the other is focused on cyber workforce and how do we future-proof our workforce.
That's really good. That's helpful. I like at every space and place that you've made this a priority. What about you, Hugh?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me on this panel with the esteemed group of panelists that we have. You know, it's such an important topic. You know, I think all of us have experienced that there is a material lack of folks that are trained up, are talented, can walk into a situation and help in cybersecurity. We all know that. And I would say we've done ourselves a huge disservice in the cybersecurity community because we've kept, with high fidelity, a secret that shouldn't be a secret. It's that cybersecurity is really cool. Like it's really actually super fun. It's very rewarding, not just financially rewarding, but it's rewarding from your heart and soul perspective. It's a mission. You're going in and you're trying to fight bad guys, and you're trying to protect something. It is such an amazing discipline because there are so many diverse problems. Those problems are changing all the time. You have an active adversary on the other side that's constantly making you change and reimagine. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face in this space is we're used to thinking about a cybersecurity professional as a highly technical person that also understands the methods of the attacker. But the reality is, if you want to do cybersecurity today, you need a massive diversity of backgrounds and skill sets. Your degree's in psychology, we want you, we need you, we have to have you, because most of the attacks now are preying on how people think. They're phishing emails, they're a phone call with a deep fake asking you to wire money, and they've got a great reason why you need to do it in the next 7 minutes. That's a human problem, it's a psychology problem. We need the kinds of folks that are great communicators, that can actually talk to people about risks without going into acronyms and Never Never Land, like in really practical terms. And so personally, I've been involved in this for many, many years in many different roles. First as a professor, which I was for many years in computer science. And I remember getting an assignment which was the most dreaded in the computer science department. It's like, this semester, you have to teach assembly language. Right? And I don't know why, right? People just don't like that class in general. But I started the class off that semester with, hey, here is a recently discovered buffer overflow vulnerability in some open source software. Let's figure out how to exploit it. And you have to know assembly to do it. And you then become so thirsty to learn more. Why can't we ingrain those kinds of principles into everything we teach? I've seen it from a different perspective, which is as somebody that's trying to hire a large cybersecurity workforce when I was a CTO at Symantec. In that case, you really get a sense of how in demand cybersecurity skill sets are. You know, people would show up with 10 resumes, and it's like point to you on this list of places that they're considering going, and almost with an attitude, it's like, talk to me, sell me. Like, I mean, that's the reality that we face in today's market. But also in the context of RSA Conference. I've been the program chair there for 15 years. And we've tried to do a lot to bring in students and get them excited about security, and non-traditional students that would typically be a cybersecurity professional, people that have studied liberal arts, for example, and tell them that this is a home for you too. So I think this is a massive topic. Thanks so much for hosting the panel on it, and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I think, so all of you all have mentioned, because we're going to transition to, I think it's important to talk about some of these shared pain points, right? So we have representation here from the government, from civil society, from corporate America, from the private sector. And I think what is so interesting about cyber is everything in cyber is so interconnected, and so are the pain points. So it doesn't matter if you're in government, you're experiencing the same pain points that the private sector is having, especially as it relates to developing the cyber workforce. And so I want us to talk about some of those pain points. I'm gonna step out first and say what everybody thinks we're gonna talk about, which is we're gonna have a pipeline problem. I really hate when people say we have a pipeline problem. I've worked on the Hill and I worked at the White House, and I would always say, well, what have you been doing to build the pipes? Like, what are you, it's not enough to say we don't have people flowing through. How are you laying down the foundation? As Craig said, like, are you talking about kids, about cyber education, so that they can see themselves in these positions, right? No child wants to be an astronaut until they know space exists. And so when do we start having these conversations and introduce in this industry? And so the pipeline problem is my pain point, because I feel like a lot of people just haven't done the work to introduce the industry. What about y'all? And if the pipeline problem is yours, you can like jump on that too. I'm open to that.
I was gonna say you took my pain point. No, I think the only thing I'll add is it's actually true. So I hear a lot of people say like, oh, if we had, especially when it comes to diversity, oh, if recruiting will give us a more diverse pipeline, we will have a more diverse team. And usually my counter argument to it is like, we're all industry leaders here, or we've been in the industry for quite a while. We should know at least a couple of organizations that we know are trying to close that opportunity divide when it comes to cybersecurity roles and opportunities. Why don't we go out and proactively partner with them, right? So I think talent is everywhere. It's just the opportunities are not making it where the talent is, instead of expecting the talent to come to us, right? So yeah, that is a pain point. I think the only thing I'll add from what we see pain point standpoint is similar to what Camille was referring to, is security is such a broad field. There's some technical aspects of it, there's some non-technical aspects of it. And I find like a lot of the security training and guides for how do you get started in the industry is very focused on learning how to hack. Yes. Where in reality, yeah, there are people that dedicate themselves to do that and they're really good at it, but we need a whole bunch of people to learn how to defend as well and convince other people that systems need to be protected. So you're not going to be writing necessarily assembly code or reverse engineering a binary to get to there, but you're going to have to convince hundreds of people to work on something. And that's a skill set in itself.
I think that goes to Hugh's point too, in terms of we need people everywhere, right? Like I'm a liberal arts attorney, but I spend a lot of time explaining very complex cyber issues to members of Congress and to people at the White House and in different parts of the administration. And I know Camille is an attorney as well. So as we elaborate on that, I think, do y'all think there's a little bit of elitism that happens in the cybersecurity space in terms of the idea that people need to have a technical background? I find a lot of the times we talk about things and we make them harder than they have to be. We were just having a conversation about acronyms. I think it's a competition at this point.
Where nobody wins.
Where no one wins.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are some of the other pain points? Camille?
I think I think a pain point across the industry is we are so focused on stopping the current bleeding that we don't make long-term investments. And that kind of piggybacks off what you guys are talking about. If we are not investing in making sure there are diverse leaders, and if we are making sure that we are grooming middle management who can rise up the ranks, if we are not focused on the education pipeline, if we are not focused on broad awareness so that folks even understand that the opportunity exists to become a cyber professional and understands that it's multidisciplinary and that those legal skills or your training skills or your marketing skills or your psychology skills are necessary in this space and valuable, and that quite frankly the technical aspects we can teach you to the extent that you need them to do your job, right? If we're not investing across that spectrum, we will never see the pipeline that we're talking about. And so rather than just like, let's put out an internship that might help people get a job, which leads to another pain point. Even after an internship, if you need 5-year experience to get an entry-level job, then the pipeline is broken. There's like a huge gap that people are trying to jump over to try to get to the next stage. Then that doesn't actually create a fulsome pipeline. It is a cycle. You don't see any leaders who look like you. You didn't hear about it when you were in grade school. There aren't any support mechanisms to help you get from the start to the end. You're just not going to thrive.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I don't think it's going to happen, to your point, Camille, by accident, unless we do something proactive. Right? In schools, for example, people don't even realize that this is a career path, that this is something that could be a profession that I can grow in, that I can thrive in. They don't understand. And I think that there's a massive gap between the opportunity and the self-satisfaction that you get by being in cyber, whether you're communicating it to the entirety of the company in terms that they can understand, which is a critical skill that most highly technical people don't have, right, and is much needed, or it's going into the bits and the bytes and taking apart the binary and figuring out where the holes are. Folks, when they are planning their go forward, they don't think about security as an option. Like I've got 5 young kids and they recently had to draw, what is it that they want to be when they grow up? One of them, firefighter, standard. Another one was a lawyer, which I thought was very impressive, very great. It's very, very, very exciting. One of them wanted to be a Christmas tree when he grew up, which
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
limited.
That's better than being a lawyer, probably.
Yeah. Wow! Oh, geez! From the lawyers. Okay, I won't repeat that. But I didn't see anybody, and I'm evangelizing it all the time at home. I didn't see anybody saying, "Oh, geez, well, I really want to be a cybersecurity person and put away the bad guys." So even in our own home, I'm not doing a great job of it. we need to figure out how to make it on the lists of things when you are in a school, whether it's middle school, high school, college, that you consider at least it's intriguing. Yeah. It's like, what's that? What's that next?
I like that. I think that is really good transition for us to also talk about what are the bright spots, right? Because if we sat here and we talked about the pain points, I think we could catalog for days and still not come up with some of them. And I know, Craig, you've been very active in terms of not just the cyber recruitment, but also exposure. So as we're talking about this, I wanted you to highlight some of the work that you've been doing to empower people that are actually making sure that we can get some career day cyber answers.
Well, for me, the big challenge, given my whole of society perspective, is how do you get everyone to start pulling together in the same direction regarding cyber. Frankly, the vision is that we need a new greatest generation, including a lot of people focused on this kind of thing. The hard part is talking people into working together, to getting people to pull together. For example, I work with groups like Aspen Digital and the 92nd Street Y, having suggested we could use a cyber summit sometime, which would really be a good milestone along these lines. But beyond that, I'm identifying with help a lot of the groups who are addressing these specific issues, starting in high school, sometimes below that, and then going beyond it. For example, one of the groups centered here in New York that does a great job is Girls Who Code. Mm-hmm. And I'm helping them focus some of their work on cyber. And then a group notoriously good at this, seriously, is the Girl Scouts of America, helping out at that level. On the other hand, since I work with a lot of vets and military spouses, we're working with a group called Vets in Tech, and so far they've trained around 2,000 vets and military spouses, placed or got promoted about 92% of them. So the idea is to just keep working on this, trying to promote the idea of cyber civil defense, that we really are all in this together. We need to protect ourselves. Now, this is an advertising or marketing campaign, Don Draper kind of stuff, and I don't know if I'm the right guy because it requires social skills and have you met me? But I figure I can only do what I can do, and because a nerd's got to do what a nerd's got to do.
Well, I will say it was very strategic for you to have us here because there were toddlers all in the lobby this morning.
Yes.
And I heard a mom explaining what we were doing, and she said they're talking about how to keep our phones and our computers safe. And I was like, okay, Craig, you were when you say 360, you mean 360, because now we're getting toddlers into the conversation, which I appreciate.
Well, so far, the youngest individual I've worked with in this regard is the 7-year-old who's gotten the Girl Scout Brownie merit badges, and let's say someone in a certain office has asked for a resume to be sent in. Because we're figuring that if you're 7, you could pass a background check. Probably.
She should still be good at that age.
I have a 5-year-old niece who won't be able to. She's gotten radicalized, we think.
Well, we'll see. Maybe in the Intel space. Maybe we'll put it. Yeah. So what about that? So I think it's important. So what are some other bright spots? Who has some good programming? I'm looking at Camille because you are in the process of really landscaping what needs to be done. The Office of the National Cyber Director has taken on the task of creating the first workforce strategy, and very openly you reached out to the community to say, send us your comments, tell us what you are doing in terms of recruitment, education, tell us everything that is working, what problems you're having. So have you seen some bright spots?
Yeah, first I'll talk a little bit about the strategy. Director Inglis has tasked me to lead an interagency, whole of nation effort to write a cyber workforce strategy that addresses the federal cyber workforce, the national cyber workforce, education and training, and then digital awareness writ large. How do we address all the things we were talking about? How do we really raise the collective level of cyber awareness, so that we're having more conversations with our toddlers about how their phones can be secure, but also how are we empowering security professionals, the few that need to be security engineers and highly technical, the many which are everyone in a cyber adjacent or cyber informed profession, and then really the collective, right? How do you make sure your entire organization, the entire population really is thinking about cyber? And we want to make sure that it is truly whole of nation. So while there is an interagency body that is really driving towards like putting pen to paper, we opened up an RFI, got 146 responses from a variety of organizations providing their feedback, their assessment of the challenge space, their assessment of the opportunities. There are some really interesting programs, some of which you've heard, going on in industry organizations and grassroots organizations that can really help inform what we do not only in the federal government, but how we support private industry and civil society as they also get behind this effort. And we had the cybersecurity apprenticeship sprint that was announced at our summit that catalyzed this effort to start a strategy development. And that closed yesterday, and we had 2,000 organizations want to learn more, 194 new cybersecurity registered apprenticeship programs, over 7,000 apprenticeships hired during our 120-day sprint, with 1,000 of them being private sector, 27% people of color, 28% women, and DoD really invested having the largest apprenticeship program. I mean, that is a real testament to the need for folks to enter into organizations, to have the training, for organizations to figure out how to pull in new talent into their organization. So there's a lot of good work going on. We're hoping to harness that. We're hoping folks stay engaged. The RFI wasn't the only opportunity. We have been working with universities to hold convenings, to have discussions around what we're hearing and how we continue to refine that and use the federal resources to empower and support industry. There's more to come, and so there's a lot of good work that is starting. We just need to make sure we're all moving in the same direction and making both the short-term, medium-term, and long-term investments.
I like that. All right, what do you have, Hugh? Do you have some examples? These are tough to beat because Camille, those numbers, when you said those numbers about the apprenticeship, I'm like, I hope you all are going to put that in a press release and get that out, and I hope everyone here is going to retweet and share because that's amazing. That is, and also for those that to focus on apprenticeships, that means people want these jobs, right? Like these are people that are trying to reskill, they're trying to enter into this workforce, and I love that you all are making a path for them.
And I agree. So I just talk for a minute about what we've been doing at RSA Conference. So many of you have probably been there over the years. It's the largest cybersecurity event. And what we've tried to do, and I want to say this has started 10 years ago, is to bring in very talented students from around the country that weren't necessarily studying computer science, but if you asked the head of the math department, the head of the comms department, the head of the, and ask them who are the best students at this place. We would actively recruit those people and say, look, come to San Francisco, it's gonna be great, a whole week. We set up dinners with cybersecurity luminaries, right? So the R, S, and the A, and the algorithm, and everybody in between. And we try and expose them as fulsomely and directly as we can into what this space really means. What are the problems? What are the opportunities? What does it mean at the coal face? Like, for example, communications. The fact that the attacker continues to evolve, the way that they communicate to us, the way that they try and deceive us with phone calls, for example, now instead of emails. And the success rate in getting those folks that weren't headed towards a cybersecurity career, but were headed towards great success in whatever they did, choosing cyber has been immense. And then in the last 5 years, we've started bringing in thousands and thousands of students, not at the top of their class, not at the top of their class, but from around the country, so that they can get the scaled view of what cyber is and feels like. And we've got a program for them to interact with a wide variety of people, and us to reveal what I think, again, is the greatest hidden secret of security, is that it is fun. You will like this, actually. All right. You will get emotional reward from doing it. You will also get very financially rewarded by doing it, especially today in the private sector, given where we are. And most people don't know that. It sounds like it's something boring when you just talk to somebody about it. I used to travel all the time. I think one year I clocked 500,000 actual miles, not premier qualifying miles or anything like that, on a plane. And I'd remember just sitting next to a random person next to me on the plane, and you have this perfunctory conversation at the beginning. It's like, hey, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm a chemist. I'm like, whoa, that's great. Tell me about that. And then it would go the other way. And it's like, what do you do? Well, I'm in cybersecurity. And then you see them start to reach in a bag for a book. It's like, hey, I've been waiting so long to read this book. It's probably going to consume me the entire flight. And I'm like, but it's starting to change. People have seen this in the headlines. You know, it's starting to become a more mainstream topic. Anything that we can do on scale, whether it's PSAs or our own version of Smokey the Bear that we start, kind of pushing out on the world, to tell people that this is cool, it's exciting, it's interesting, and it matters. I think you'll have people just coming to us instead of us having the problem of hunting them down.
Yeah, which I think, we were coming off of October, which was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I love the slogan this year, which was "See yourself in cyber." I thought that was so important because I think that's what we have to show people, right? Like, I know Craig's organization and the team here at Aspen. Recently, I've been to the University of Mississippi talking about what cyber looks like. I've been to Southern University, which is a HBCU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And people, it means something when they have someone show up with this accent that sounds like them, or show up as a Black woman that looks like them, and just talk about your experience. And the first question I always get is like, so you're like, you must be really good at math. I'm like, absolutely not. I also don't do it in public. I don't do that. But these are the things that I am good at, and these are the things that I enjoy, and this is the space. We're in a place now, y'all, where Kendrick Lamar is making deepfake videos. Like, this is helping, this is marketing. Like, I see some younger folks down there that are like, yeah, we watch those videos too.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What are some of the bright spots?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's become more mainstream. Similar story. So I used to work for Hulu prior to Datadog, and every time I'll have to go to the airport and I'll get picked up from our office. I live in LA. It's usually like, oh, I have a content pitch or a content idea to pitch to you. I'm like, I don't do that. And 99.9% of the time, I said, hey, I just run security and IT, right? And it's like, oh, okay, fine. And the ride will be the quietest ride ever, except for this one guy that was like, oh, actually, my show is about cyber, and my first episode is about ransomware. So we talked about it during the way, and I kept saying, listen, I don't buy content, I don't do any of that, but that sounds pretty cool, and I gave him some pointers. That was right after one of the seasons of Mr. Robot came out, so it became pretty popular. So it's become more mainstream. I think, some bright spots, and Craig alluded to it, I've done work with the Girl Scouts of America before, and I like the fact of that representation. So we had an event. I brought the CIO of 20th Century Fox, and she talked to the Girl Scouts, and I had a couple engineers on my team do that. And personally, I get involved in the Latino community, in a couple of nonprofits that are meant for getting people into tech, different aspects of tech, security being one of them. Because I do agree with the fact that if you don't see it, you can't imagine it. Yeah. So, us that have privileged enough to be in the position that we are, going back and say, hey, it is possible for you to do it. But there are also like many options for you to choose from, right? Like, my role is a role. It doesn't need, you need to go for that path, but there are so many different options here. It is cool to work on it. Or you can be say you're in tech, you can be a software developer and care about security and be a great product developer, and you're making the best friend of the security team because you're security focused. So there are many paths here in this field.
Yeah. And so we're going to open it up for questions. And, oh, yay, hands went up immediately. Yes, we'll go ahead and open up for questions because I don't want us to run out of time.
Hi, so I'm the reporter from SC Media, and thanks to you all for sharing. I have a question in regard to how recession will impact the cybersecurity workforce. Well, there are a lot of people saying cybersecurity is a relatively recession-proof industry. I've seen a lot of tech companies are laying off workers. So I wonder, does recession has an impact on cybersecurity workforce? And if so, how does it reshape the workforce?
So the question for our online audience is, how does recession impact the cybersecurity industry?
Maybe I can start and then pass it down. Cybercrime just thrives in times of uncertainty. Right? We've seen it happen over and over and over again. And if you look at many of the security requirements at companies today, they're non-negotiable. Like they've been escalated up either to the board as a compensating control for a risk that's at the board level, or they've been regulated and mandated to the point where you can't actually continue your business as usual, even if that business as usual is shrinking, without having these cyber controls. And so I think we're at a point, which is not a great thing, but because we have such a deficit in cybersecurity workers and talent, I haven't seen among the portfolio companies that we have at Crosspoint Capital, I haven't seen anything that would indicate that those jobs are number one on the chopping block for companies, and in companies where they've had to do it because they've had to scale their whole organization down, I've seen those folks quickly pick up alternate jobs just because the open racks survive an economic downturn. But
yeah, no, I agree. I think in the private sector, at least for what we're seeing, is we're still getting candidates that still have 3 other offers that we're competing against. Maybe what we've seen is a decrease of, I used to have 5 other offers, now I have 3, but it's still very competitive. So I think it's mostly recession proof, and I think companies that have to decide to cut some of the security workforce is because they have to do it, right? Like there's survival aspects to it from the business standpoint, and sure enough, they pick up another job quickly.
Yeah. Other questions? Sure.
Hi, my name is Sandra Khalil. I'm with All Tech is Human, and I'm also studying cyber policy at NYU. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm currently doing research on cyber workforce development, and one of the ideas that my partner and I were thinking about was not only standardizing the cyber education to make it more of a licensing board, the way we would standardize a medical doctor, engineer, lawyer, but we're also thinking about how to weave cyber into a more vocational type of programming so that cyber operators in critical infrastructure specifically are equipped with the knowledge at the intersection of cybersecurity and industrial manufacturing. So I'm wondering if the panel has any thoughts on that and any challenges you might foresee.
That's a good question. So how do we start to incorporate the cyber workforce and cyber skills into more vocational aspects as well?
So I definitely think there's an opportunity for vocational training in cyber. I mean, there are a number of different models and a number of different ways that can happen. You could definitely do it. I think the argument against licensing in cybersecurity is that the pace of innovation, the pace of change is too quick for the licensing. And so you will run into an issue with how have you guaranteed that people keep up with the needs of today. That said, for lawyers, we have a duty of care. You gotta know what you're talking about before you go talk to somebody. And so there are other opportunities, I think, to kind of keep that pace. But you'll probably hear lots of pushback on the licensing thing in the near term, particularly because infrastructure is so different at different organizations. The regulatory regime is changing quite rapidly. It's a pretty complicated space.
You will need to get recertified almost on a yearly
Quite,
basis.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happens when you go over time, but we are over time. And so I know we have more questions, but we're going to be here this afternoon, and we're happy to keep chatting about these. But I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. I think this is a very important topic, and thank you all for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really.